The second episode of To Be Hero X played out a lot differently than many of us probably imagined. While the show immediately addresses the shocking cliffhanger from last week, the main conflict isn't centered around Lin and Miss J dealing with the unexpected murder of the beloved hero Moon. Instead, the episode expands on the character of Moon and develops her relationship with Lin. The episode begins with a guy drinking as a news report plays, covering the incident with Lin's boss on a talk show he was on. Following the opening scene, Lin awakens from his slumber after his pleasant dream turns sour as he sees Moon covered in blood. Once he awakens, Lin is relieved to see that she is still alive, though not as friendly as she was toward him previously. It turns out that Moon knew that he wasn't really nice, and the affection she displayed towards the late hero was all part of an act. Their relationship was formed at the behest of Miss J, to appease Nice's fans who wanted them to get together and to strengthen the value of the company's most valuable asset. Upon learning about his death from Lin, Moon's desire to end that arrangement finally reaches its boiling point. After 3 years of pretending to be Nice's girlfriend, Moon wants nothing more than to end the charade and regain the freedom she once had during her early days as a blogger. In spite of Moon's yearning for autonomy, Miss J proposes that she marry Lin in an effort once again to cater to the whims of Nice's supporters. However, Moon is vehemently opposed to this idea and refuses to go through with it. In response, Miss J decides to lock the two of them in the tower until she accepts her proposition. Enthusiastic about the idea of marrying her, Lin tries to lighten her mood as they both deal with their unexpected confinement at Hero Tower. This was quite the engrossing episode, as the show revealed more about Moon and kept introducing twists that subverted expectations. That being said, I was initially disappointed by the fake out regarding Moon's death earlier in the episode, as I thought it would have been nice to see how that situation would get resolved. Even so, one could say it works well as foreshadowing for the staging of Moon's death later in the episode, and subsequently the end of her career as a hero. Although some may see this particular moment as a cop-out, I'd argue it fits thematically, given that both Lin and Moon are deceiving their fans. Similarly, viewers were fooled into believing that the heroine had mysteriously died with last week's cliffhanger, only to find out it was all just a dream. There are several instances throughout this episode where series writer Lee Howling deliberately misleads the audience. The first of which occurs in the opening scene with Nice's nemesis, Rek, as he's listening to the news broadcast. Viewers are initially led to believe that he killed Moon out of jealousy, but of course that wasn't actually the case. It's later revealed that he became envious of her after Miss J stops calling on him to fight Nice as his rival, and he suddenly lost contact with him. Another instance where Lee pulls the wool over our eyes is with Lin's fake proposal to Moon on live TV. Prior to this moment is the scene where Lin makes a swing to cheer her up and tells Moon that she's been his driving force all this time. From there, the show seamlessly transitions into the marriage proposal scene, which makes it appear as though the pair legitimately decided to tie the knot. At first, it seemed as though Miss J's plan to get them to fall for each other while being stuck in the tower together was successful. It was easy to believe that the two of them had truly fallen in love with one another, given a couple moments they shared together earlier in the episode. Moon is a little hostile towards him at first, but eventually softens as they spend time together and Lin drops the nice act. He finally gets her to let down her guard after having fun throwing fruit at each other. Later that night, she opens up to him about being shackled to Nice because of the selfish desires of their supporters. These were excellent scenes that served to build up Lin's rapport with Moon and show more sides to the character. In both sequences, their interactions felt totally natural, thanks in no small part to the well-written dialogue and great performances by the voice actors. Generally speaking, Mauricio Ortiz-Seora and Bryn April do a great job conveying the emotions of these characters throughout the episode. Aside from the voice acting and writing, the cinematography during the scene where they're laying down at night was very solid. The animation team visually conveys the idea that the two of them are growing closer due to composition and size of certain shots. This scene is presented in such a way that you're able to get a good sense of where both of them are located in the room and the distance between them. Although Lin and Moon are far apart from each other, there are a couple wide shots that make it look like they're lying right next to each other. Once Moon uses her portal gun to demonstrate why she can't leave the tower, the space between them appears to vanish as she begins to speak candidly about her situation. Moon is tired of being at the mercy of their fans, whose desire for her to be with Nice forever has caused her power to change. Instead of being able to create portals to anywhere anywhere she wants, they lead directly to Nice's current location. This scene introduces a pretty interesting wrinkle to how abilities work in their world. So now we know it's not just the faith of the people that can directly impact the hero's powers, but their will as well. While this factor has limited the capabilities of Moon's portal gun, who's to say that another hero's powers couldn't be altered in a more positive way based on the desires of the people? Regardless of its limitations, Moon's powers proved to be quite useful during the duo's fight against Wreck later in the episode. There were some cool moments during that action sequence, with Lin making use of her portals to catch his nemesis off guard. Aside from assisting Nice with her power, she also uses it to launch a few quick attacks of her own. I love that part where Moon kept coming at Wreck while he was fixated on Lin during the beginning of the battle. Wreck eventually gets fed up with her and tries to isolate himself and Lin so that he can talk to him in private about Nice's whereabouts. That was the moment where the tension started to rise, and I started to think that maybe Moon might actually die. Given Wreck's emotional state at this point, I thought he might actually kill her the moment Lin told him about Nice's suicide. I figured he wouldn't be able to accept his friend's death and kill her as he lashes out in anger or something. That moment after Lin delivers the final blow to Wreck, when Moon's blood pack gets triggered, fooled me into thinking that she had really been mortally wounded. The somber background music and excellent voice acting really sold this powerful dramatic sequence. I was fully expecting this battle to end with the heroine's tragic death, which would have tied back nicely with the fake out earlier in the episode and Lin's suggestion that they need a tragedy in order for the public to accept them splitting apart. Even without her dying, the conclusion to this conflict still had plenty of emotional weight behind it. Moon finally got her freedom, but at the cost of having to part ways with someone she had gotten close to. Before I wrap this video up, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the outstanding presentation throughout this episode. Just like in the premiere, there are moments where the show switches from 3D animation to a more traditional style. The transitions between the two mediums were fairly smooth, and even stylish in one instance. In this particular scene, the background begins to gradually morph from the primary 3D art style into the secondary 2D one, seamlessly transitioning between the two forms of animation. In addition to the art style used during the second half of Nice and Moon's fight against Wreck, the production team presents Moon's backstory earlier in the episode with a more rudimentary looking MS Paint aesthetic. Regardless of which art style or type of animation is being used, the animation quality remained consistent throughout the episode. The animation during the big action sequence was very fluid, and the fight choreography was great. Overall, Lee and the production team have delivered another terrific episode. The unpredictability of the plot and the development of Lin and Moon's relationship kept me invested the whole way through. However, I could totally understand if things were a little too slow for those who didn't enjoy their scenes together in the tower. This week's episode ends on another compelling note, with Enlighter being given a fear amplifier device from a mysterious machine most likely sent from the Spotlight organization. Now that he's figured out that Lin is nice, it will be interesting to see what will happen once he exposes the truth. Anyway, let me know what you thought about this episode in the comment section below, and as always, thanks for watching.